We're going to talk today about anti-Semitism.
Mhm.
Who's ready?
That's when the people should be here. All the others that were in.
Yeah, they're going to miss a good
They're gonna
class.
miss, maybe you should record it, is it possible?
All right. Okay, let's get right into it. Okay, so
Yeah, because I just like you can't, I just want to say one thing. Just like I know people, I have friends that are black and they'll say right away racism. And I don't like also when they say anti-Semitism, you can't say it for every single thing because you have to define what they mean. Right? I mean, and people just, a lot of people today throw things around and, so that's all I'm gonna say.
right. So to answer your question, anti-Semitism means when it's directed towards Jews. When the hatred is directed towards Jews. Now that could manifest itself in many different forms. If you look in your textbook in the back, there's a definition of anti-Semitism. I think it's on the last page.
Yeah.
The way it was adopted by the Holocaust Remembrance
in our class.
and other organizations and countries adopted this definition, which is any form of racism or hate or bias against Jews in general, for whatever reason, or in any association, as long as it affects Jews, that's called anti-Semitism. That's what's defined as anti-Semitism. Yeah.
I mean, because like it depends also, it's how it's said. Someone could say some innocent thing, or someone could say something really heavy.
Right.
Aren't there other Semitic peoples though?
Aren't there? What was your question?
Well, are there other Semitic people?
Technically speaking, yes, but for all practical purposes, when people say anti-Semitism, it means Jewish people. Okay, there are no other peoples, other Semites that suffer from anti-Semitism.
Actually,
There's more.
sorry,
incidents.
just to chime in here, while Semite does mean various Semitic people, like the term was actually coined and used during Nazi Germany, and that is why it became a definition for anti-Jewish specifically. So if somebody tells you, oh, Semitic people can mean a lot of things, that's actually incorrect historically.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing. Very interesting. Okay.
And there's more incidents of hatred towards us than any other group,
Right.
correct?
Okay,
That's
so
another thing.
what we're gonna focus on here. Oh, welcome. Okay, it's fine. There's plenty of seats. What we're gonna focus on is anti-Semitism, the way it manifests itself in anti-Zionist talk, and anti-Israel activity, activism, we should say. Right. So today, a lot of the anti-Semitism doesn't show itself like Nazi anti-Semitism or European 18th century anti-Semitism, blood libels, or medieval anti-Semitism, crusades, and similar forms of anti-Semitism. Today, anti-Semitism will express itself in boycotting Israel, in Israel hate groups on campuses. And the reason it's anti-Semitism is, frankly, because we'll get into it more in detail later, but just to generalize, the reason it's anti-Semitism is because, I'll put it this way, throughout history, there were many philosophers who tried to figure out why is there so much anti-Semitism, and they came up with all sorts of answers. And none of the answers are good answers. You know why? Because the reason keeps changing. Every generation, they have to come up with a new answer because the dynamics are different, and the result is always the same. So it can't be that all of the answers just so happen to be true in each generation.
You need an umbrella.
Doesn't make sense.
Terminology to encompass everything.
But
Right.
it snowballs also because we are the real minority in the world, so it's so easy for us to be targeted because, that's what, I guess, like you say, with Israel, even though I'm not against killing, it's just amazing that they do what they do.
They were
So
putting
let me focus
posters.
1 second. Let me focus on what you said about minority. How about in America, in Western civilizations where minorities are admired? where minorities are respected. Every other minority is so respected. The rights of minority groups is like, that's the worship of the USA, right? But when it comes to the Jews,
No,
it's
we're the true
different,
minority,
right?
though. They're not the true minority. Even though it's considered like government, they'll say minority, but we're the real minority, right?
But at the same time, we're chosen to bring peace to the world.
Yeah,
Right, but let's focus.
That's
When
different.
diversity is appreciated, it's to the exclusion of the Jews.
I know, I
Right,
realize we are the
so
other.
that's- So that's why it doesn't make sense. I was like, all these explanations, the rationalizations that white supremacists, they want to they persecute any minority.
Right.
And yet they're
That
the
only
problem.
works for white supremacists. How about liberals? Why are they going after the Jews? So you're gonna say, well, because they believe in human rights. Yeah, but the people who don't believe in human rights are also chasing after this. So how could everybody? It was very it stood out in times in
But we
the
don't try to convert people. That's the one thing. We never say you should believe our way, where other people do pound it into you. I mean, you're walking down the street, or when you're in the subway, they yell it out. I'm not saying anything to them or against them, but I'm just saying it's intrusive when you do that. But we never do that. We don't go over and say.
If we did it, we'd get
Yeah.
killed for it.
Doesn't
Right,
Judaism actually, they're basically against conversion? I mean, you have to really want to become Jewish. in order-
right. We don't encourage conversion. We don't actively seek it out, but it is encouraged if somebody's really sincere.
Yes.
It is a
Well,
good
Myron
thing.
Johnson is a good example.
I
of
don't
that.
People were
personally,
taking down posters the other day.
She's talking.
Go ahead.
no, I'm
People
just
were
saying, I
taking
don't
out-
personally think it's about Judaism not proactively converting people in comparison to other religions, because when you look at America, for the most part, if you look, you're from New York, so most people are non-religious. They're atheist or maybe like a believer in light, whatever. So I don't think it's a matter of what Judaism is trying to do or not do. It's the perception of what Jews are that I
Very
think
good.
what
Very good
you're
point.
trying to
I
say is
agree.
it's a cross party. It's bipartisan type of prejudice that comes from all sectors of society. And even though the right or the left both have their own reason why specifically Jews are, well, bad or whatever it is. And given the fact that there's a lot of reasons why on the, I wouldn't say liberalism, I would call them more, let's call them left, because the right can be liberal actually. But when you look at the left and you look at BLM and you look at civil rights, et cetera, why the idea of equality and diversity suddenly change when it comes to Jews, and then they are perceived again as the enemy. And with a perception of what goes on in the left today, it basically means white supremacy, right? Jews are white supremacists to
Never
them.
heard of that. Oh.
That's
Right.
Jews are white
that's how they
supremacists, except for the
view
white supremacists.
Right.
No, they-
the progressive
So I
left.
think we're all leading to the same point.
Yeah, right.
Which
It's
is
a
that
combination of
historically there have always been excuses for why to hate the Jews.
Right.
And what's clear from history is that the excuses, the rationalizations kept changing, but the anti-Semitism was always there, right? Which just shows that it really surpasses the various reasonings that are given for it. It's not about the reasons. Okay, so in the Middle Ages, it was about religion. The Jews were the ones who killed the Savior, and we have to convert them. And then if the Muslims hated the Jews because they need to accept the Prophet. That was in medieval times. Then religion lost its prestige, its priority in the world. So then there became other, when social ideology started taking over the world. So the communists hated the Jews because they were fascists, and the fascists hated the Jews because they were communists. And it was simultaneous. And I mean, they can't both be true at the same time. So, but that was the situation. The Germans hated the Jews because of politics. The Soviet communists hated the Jews because of politics. And then there was scientific ideology also. Okay, so this is again in the 20th century, a lot of science. So there was, a lot of scientific studies that actually helped promote Nazism, race science. They have to cleanse the races in order that so there's a lot of different reasons. We're not going to get into all of them, but you see, it keeps changing. It keeps changing. So today, one manifestation of it is what the progressive world worships today is human rights. So that's why they keep slamming Israel for being what? For committing
Colonialism.
violating human rights, right? For
Colonialism,
apartheid,
blah,
for
blah,
genocide,
blah, yeah.
for all the big sins of human rights. Because that's whatever is popular in the world at the time, the Jews are the opposite of that. So if everybody believes in communism, the Jews are bad because they're not communists. If everybody believes in socialism, the Jews are bad because they're not socialists. If everybody believes in Christianity, the Jews are bad because they don't believe in that. So we're always on the wrong side of history, whatever we do, right?
My friend was brought up on the Lower East Side. She's 80 years old now. Anyway, she told me that when wasn't particularly religious, but she's followed Israel since she's young. So she was at 7 years old. She was in a class with other Ukrainians were there. And she asked the little girl next to her, "Can I borrow a pen or a pencil?" And she said, "No, because you're a Jew and you killed Christ." So she stabbed her in the back with a pencil.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to play a video. Yeah, what do you
I
want
just
to
wanted to say something.
Go ahead.
Allison,
Go ahead.
they also have this perception, this distorted perception, that if things don't go their way, that we're controlling everything. We're in charge and we control the whole.
So again, that's another,
Which is such
another
a
rationalization, right?
ridiculous distortion.
My point is, don't get sidetracked by the different slogans that they're using at the time, because they're just temporary slogans. It's going to change, and the anti-Semitism is going to stay. Why? Maybe we'll get into that more soon. What's the deeper reason behind it? But the anti-Semitism is much larger than the specific
But it'll always be the
accusations they
same
give.
name. They're not going, the rabbis still believe that anti-Semitism is the encompassing terminology. So, there,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's agreed?
Call it Jew hate, call it whatever.
No, but I'm saying, will that endure, or will that be changed and evolve?
Why is the screen sharing not working?
You're not hearing.
What's your question? Whether the term
Terminology,
anti-Semitism,
will that
the
evolve?
term is not what matters. It's
I
the
know,
idea, right?
But what we've been using for a long time, among the years,
1 second, I'm trying to
Will
figure
that
out why
change?
this is not
will that
sharing.
change?
The
Alright.
terminology doesn't matter. It's the
But you know,
When you
concept, right?
say, when it's, I see bias in the United Nation, are you, UN?
Yeah, I'm trying to share a
Okay.
video. Yeah.
You know, it's so,
This happens every time.
somebody told me years ago, and I didn't have to say anything, but
Stop
the
share.
executioners, thousands and thousands of people.
Mayan, are you trying to show your video? Because we don't see you.
If you don't have any followers, you're not gonna see.
Me? No, my video is off. Should
Oh, okay. No, we just see a white, looks like a
Yeah.
finger.
We don't show her picture.
Okay. You want to get the door? Yeah.
See, you're starting to get people. They probably heard you outside. They want to come in to listen.
You are screen sharing. I don't know why this is still here.
They were horrible even to their own people.
Oh, it started it, and then I think you clicked on it.
Yeah, but you know what? They also said the dog created other sin.
No one?
It's fine.
Okay. Oh.
Sometimes Zoom is it's infamous with some bugs happen when you try to show videos when you share your screen. It's a thing.
I don't know.
No,
Yeah, I did this last time. It worked. Oh,
Here
we go.
In the 1960s.
How about now? Is it working? Do you see the video?
Yeah.
You see it now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
There's another way to go.
On the eastern shore of Manhattan Island, the United Nations headquarters rises from a row of colored flags that represent a multitude of nations. Across the avenue, the Isaiah Wall proclaims a Jewish prophet's vision of universal peace. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. The UN's mission is precisely that, to resolve armed conflicts and to foster global harmony.
Isaiah زي إشعياء
But inside the august
Yes,
chambers
yes.
of the United
okay.
Nations, founded in 1945 as a response to a war-ravaged world desperate for coexistence, Isaiah could have easily found himself the target of virulent condemnation had he survived into modern times. Isaiah lived in ancient Israel that for over a millennia included the territories that the UN considers illegally occupied by today's Jewish state. The Temple Mount that lies at the heart of Isaiah's prophecy is no longer considered by the UN to be the heritage or possession of the Jewish people. Indeed, the tiny country that Isaiah called home has become the focus of the majority of the UN's denunciations and has inspired more censure than all of today's tyrants put together. Iran, North Korea, and other brutal regimes systematically kill their citizens or deny them the most basic of human rights. Israel's northern neighbor, Syria, has murdered tens of thousands of innocent civilians. Apparently, however, that isn't very important in the eyes of the UN General Assembly and Security Council, who continually pass one-sided resolutions that single out and condemn Israel. An overwhelmingly powerful bloc led by the Arab nations promotes a narrow and slanderous agenda meant to isolate Israel. This agenda has met little resistance. The UN's General Assembly votes on 70 to 100 resolutions annually. 15 to 20 of these regularly express disapproval of Israel. From 2016 until 2020, the Assembly adopted 122 resolutions criticizing various countries. 91 of these targeted Israel. That's 75% of all country-specific resolutions. And while 3/4 of this global forum's written rage lambastes the Jewish state, precious few of the most repressive or blood-soaked regimes on earth have received even a single rebuke. Emergency special sessions of the Assembly are rare. During the last 40 years, they've been convened for one purpose only: to condemn Israel. The Assembly's embrace of a terrorist entity has been equally astounding. In October 1974, 14 years before the Palestinian Liberation Organization even nominally forced war terrorism, the Assembly voted to invite a PLO spokesman to take part in its deliberations. This was the first time that anyone who was neither a government representative nor a head of a quasi-state was granted such a privilege. The following year, the Assembly awarded the PLO permanent representative status. A few months later, the UN infamously approved Resolution 3379, branding Zionism as a form of racism. At the time, Israel's UN ambassador, Chaim Herzog, told his fellow delegates that Hitler would have felt at home listening to the UN debate on the measure.
For us, the Jewish people, this is no more than a piece of paper, and we shall treat it as such.
Since the 1993 Oslo Accords, hundreds of Israelis have been killed and thousands injured by Palestinian terror attacks. During the same period, the UN passed dozens of resolutions deploring Israel, but not one against the terror attacks. Since the 2006 creation of the UN's Human Rights Council, most of the world's human rights abusers have suffered nary a mild rebuke. Israel, on the other hand, is chastised as often as all of the rest of the countries combined, and in terms more condemnatory. At the Council's every meeting, a topic billed as, quote, human rights situation in Palestine and other occupied Arab territories is raised as a separate agenda item, while the remaining totality of mankind constitutes a single other point on the agenda. From 2006 to May 2021, Israel was condemned in no less than 94 Human Rights Council resolutions. During the same period, Syria was condemned 36 times, North Korea 14 times, and China has been spared condemnation altogether. Even within the walls of the UN, the absurdity of its anti-Israel bias is fleetingly, partially acknowledged. In September 2006, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan conceded.
Supporters of Israel feel that it is harshly judged by standards that are not applied to its enemies. And too often this is true, particularly in some UN bodies.
In August 2013, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon reflected on Israel's treatment at the UN.
Some bias against the Israeli people and government.
In December 2016, he told the UN Security Council,
A disproportionate volume of resolutions, reports, and conferences criticizing Israel.
One of the more telling comments came inadvertently in November 2013, when a UN interpreter failed to silence her microphone as she addressed her colleague.
I mean, I think when you have 5 statements, not 5, but like a total of 10 resolutions on Israel and Palestine, there's got to be something. C'est un peu trop, non? I mean, I know it's yes, it's right, but it's not the. There's other really bad happening. Nobody says anything about the other stuff. Apologies.
I understand there was a problem with interpretation.
Israel is not larger than 8,019 square miles in total. It is the Middle East's only functioning democracy and champion of human rights. It is a world provider of humanitarian disaster relief and medical, agricultural, ecological, scientific, technological, and security innovations. But when seen through the lens of historical UN bias, the overwhelming majority of all the world's evils and all of the world's ills belong to the tiny Jewish homeland in which Isaiah spoke his vision of swords being beaten into plowshares.
Okay, so this was just an expression of how really what people are claiming to be legitimate criticism of Israel is really extreme bias, to such an extreme that there is no way of reasonably explaining it other than that it's another form of anti-Semitism. So how do we actually differentiate between anti-Semitism or legitimate criticism? Okay, so we have to figure that out. Let me fix the share screen. Mayan, what do you see on the screen?
How might we differentiate?
Good. Okay, good. Okay, so as Jews, we're always criticizing Israel ourselves. Among the Israeli Knesset, you have 120 members, and nobody shares the same opinion. So why are we saying that all this is anti-Semitism? So there are a few basic principles how we can identify that it's actually out of proportion. So let's see what they are. This is a 3D test from Natan Sharansky. He said he made an acronym for it. He said there are 3 Ds. We have it in our textbooks. Page 88. Look on page 88. This comes from a Medrash Rabbah, which was written 2,000 years ago. During the the rule of Hadrian, who was a Caesar of Rome. Look on page 88 in your textbooks. Right there, you have it.
Is it?
Yeah, the other one right there.
Oh.
Yeah. The Roman emperor, he banned circumcision, he banned Shabbat, and this was the beginning of an era of persecution to the Jews. So there was one person, Imikanteron. It's not known anything. We don't know anything about him other than his name.
What country was this?
So presumably he was a Jew, and he was writing to the Caesar of Rome, and appealing his ban. And he told him it can't be that your ban is legitimate. His concern was it wasn't healthy, the circumcision. That was the excuse he gave for his decree. And this Imikatron told him, this is in the text, Amar lo, he told him, Im lamulim atasone, if you have something against the circumcised, Elu ha'ishme'elim, why don't you go persecute the Arabs? They also circumcise their children. Them you leave alone, but the Jews you're targeting. Im lemishamrei Shabbat atasone, and if you have something against those who keep Shabbat, Elu hakutim, the Kutites also keep Shabbat, and them you're not persecuting, you're leaving them alone, but the Jews you're targeting. So it turns out that you don't have anything against circumcision, you don't have anything against Shabbat, you have something against the Jews, and you're applying it to whatever the Jews are doing, right? So here we see already 2,000 years ago this argument was used. The continuation of the story was that Hadrian wanted to kill him for writing him this letter, criticizing his decree. That was the way things went.
I'm saying it's a double standard.
Oh, very good, very good. That's the idea. The idea is it's a double standard. If you apply one standard to the whole world and another standards to Israel, then that shows that it's not rational. Okay, so that's one of the D's. First one is demonization. The second one is double standards and delegitimization. Demonization means that you're not just criticizing them, but you're beating them to the last drop. You're demonizing them. You're blowing it totally out of proportion. You're criticizing their existence because of something they did. Countries make many policies. Some of them could be good, some of them could be bad. You could criticize individual policies, but to blow it out of proportion, and like you see here, a Nazi symbol, to say that the Israeli government are like Nazis, I mean, that's totally out of proportion. That's demonizing them even if you had a valid criticism, that's not voicing it as valid criticism. The second is double standards, which I think you saw in the video, plenty of double standardism. The rest of the world plays on a certain set of rules, and Israel doesn't fall under that set of rules. They have their own set of rules, which is whatever they do, they can never get it right. And
they're getting brainwashed with these ideas like it's in concrete. It's in stone.
Right, so we have to know how to identify it.
But the people are believing they're people under them.
So we have to know how to recognize it for what it is. The third is delegitimization, which means undermining Israel's right to exist. Not recognizing Israel. That's not criticizing Israel. That's taking away the legitimacy of the essence of Israel. No other country is criticized on its mere existence. Right? Its policies can be criticized, but not its existence.
Right.
Okay, so that's the third. These are the three Ds, which are different ways to recognize it.
That means that they don't even care if they get annihilated.
Exactly. And by the way, that's another reason why this falls under anti-Semitism, is because if you're pushing for a policy, and the result of the policy is that Jews are going to be persecuted as a result, then you're not pushing a policy, you're pushing anti-Semitism. Criticism of Israel is inherently attached to the danger of Jewish lives. If Israel isn't a strong country, then all the millions of Jews living in Israel, their lives are in danger, and not a theoretical potential danger, but an imminent danger, right? So the second Israel, sorry?
And then ours are too.
Exactly.
I didn't really think of that before. Does he consider himself
It
an
affects
American?
us, it affects everyone.
Yeah, because I was thinking to myself, I'm American, I'm born here, I know the lifestyle here, but it's true, if we do need a place to go, that's the only place.
Even the governor says there's more incidents now since this happened with Israel, the governor of our state.
Certainly, certainly.
And look what happened in Canada, we don't even know what it is yet, they haven't defined it. But there's all kinds of stuff that goes on, and there's more incidents of anti-Semitism, which impacts on everybody in the mainstream population since this happened in Israel. There was no benefit to it.
Right, right. Okay, so till here is the first part of what we're going to discuss today, which is how anti-Semitism manifests itself in various forms. Actually, I'm going to play one more clip on that, and we'll conclude this segment with that. How anti-Semitism manifests itself in anti-Israelism. So if anybody tells you anti-Israelism, tell them, well, you have what Russia is doing and what Syria is doing and what Iran is doing, and don't tell me anything about Israel. Right. And by the way, another important thing to keep in mind, not to defend Israel, because the moment you're defending Israel, you're on the defensive.
Yeah.
You're accepting the weak position they put you in. You should counter the questioner and point out to him that what he's doing is anti-Semitism. You have to point that out to him. Don't let him get away with that anti-Semitism, that subtle anti-Semitism, and start defending Israel. That's not the discussion.
So what do you say to him?
Right? You have to point out to him how he himself is applying a double standard. Point out to him the flaw in whoever is.
Oh, you mean the general
yeah.
person? Well, that's why I didn't discuss it with some of my friends. They never mentioned
That's also
anything.
smart.
No, but the point is.
That's also a good
Jewish,
idea.
Being that one of them is Jewish, but doesn't care about it. And the others are not, and these friends that I see once in a while, a school friend, or many years, not one of them said anything to me, which is really upsetting. Because if it were the other way around, I would.
We're getting to
All right.
Okay, what do we see now on the screen?
Why is there
Rabbi
so much
Sachs?
anti-Semitism?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, it's not on my screen.
Again, I think it's because we're the true minority and people like to hate.
Okay, there we go.
Yes, okay.
There we go. Okay.
How can anti-Zionism be the new anti-Semitism? Surely there's no connection between them. Anti-Semitism is hatred of Jews as a people, a race, an ethnic group. Anti-Zionism is an objection to a country, a nation, a state. What's the connection between them? Anti-Semitism is a virus that mutates, so that new anti-Semites can deny that they're anti-Semites at all, because their hate is different from the old.
You see, what he's saying is that it's a virus that mutates. So it will just take on another form. Anti-Semitism is a virus. Now we have Israel, so it will take on that form.
In the Middle Ages, Jews were hated for their religion. In the 19th and early 20th century, they were hated for their race. Today, they are hated for their nation state, Israel. What all three have in common is that there are different ways of saying that Jews have no right to exist collectively as Jews with the same rights as other human beings. In each era, anti-Semitism has focused on the primary form of collective Jewish existence. In the Middle Ages, they were a religious community, so they were hated for their religion. In the 19th century, when many European Jews became secular, they formed an ethnic group, a race, and were hated as such. Today, when their primary collective embodiment is as the people of Israel in the state of Israel, they are hated for their state. Anti-Zionism is the latest mutation of the world's longest hate. What then is the connection between Jews as a people, Judaism as a religion, and Israel as a state?
Okay, we'll stop here. It's a longer video.
Interesting, I like that.
Yeah, I could send you the full video.
Can you send me this video after? It's actually
Sure.
a really good video.
Sure.
Sure.
A lot of interesting videos here.
Because we don't see
Okay.
her, so it's.
She doesn't want to be, she's camera shy.
I'm not used to Zoom.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, now let's get, and now that do you see why is there so much anti-Semitism?
Yeah.
Mayan, you see it?
Yes.
It mutates from
Good.
one.
Right.
side
So
to
now
the
that we know
other.
that we shouldn't blame the reason, we have to understand there's a much bigger cause for anti-Semitism.
It mutates from one.
What is it about?
What is
Why
it?
really is there so much? Why is there such a long history of anti-Semitism?
Well, we
Let's
talked
see what the
about it one
Torah
time,
says
it was
about
like
it.
DNA, a lot of them, they have a DNA that.
4,000 years ago, somebody passed and לא עברנו לו טוב בעין.
Well.
It's a joke, it's a joke. לא עברנו לו טוב בעין לפני 4,000 שנה. משהו קרה.
Okay, so let's see.
Hashem chose us and we accepted the Torah.
Okay, you're getting there. Let's see.
Yeah, but
God's favoritism and it's jealousy. And
I have a question. A Jew answers a question with a question. You know why a Jew always answers a question with a question? Why not?
Oh, I know.
Okay, so we have a question. Why is there so much anti-Semitism? The answer is it's not the only question. We have so many other questions. What are the other questions we have about the Jewish people? There are many of them. Some of the key questions are, how did the Jewish people survive for so long? Right? Everybody knows Mark Twain wrote about this question. There are many philosophers throughout the generations who wrote about this question. How could it be that all the other nations, the great empires, were superpowers, they led the world, and they're vanished, they don't exist today, and the Jewish people are still alive? Can anybody imagine today America or Russia or China vanishing, totally being non-existent? You can't imagine it. You could because you're smarter, right? But look at the reality, and you see it has such a strong presence in the reality today, and it's hard to imagine. It's hard to picture the world in such a state. Well, there were such superpowers time and again, and they're gone. And why are they gone? First of all, because of wars, battlefields, nations were conquered by other nations. And a second reason is internal crashes. Societies change, values change. It's hard to keep up your values for so many centuries. And so when the values change, the next generation doesn't uphold the same heritage as the last generation. So nations assimilate, they lose their sense of identity, and they merge with other nations, right? The next generations don't carry with such pride the heritage of their previous generations, so the nationality dissipates.
however, there's sort of a melting pot in Israel too. Ethiopians, you have Palestinians, you have some Arabs that live there.
But let's leave that aside for right now.
There is they hate it so much that they're still moving in there.
Right, let's leave that aside
Can I
for right
just
now. I don't
mention-
want to get sidetracked.
This Hank's father did, Hank's father, parents were survivors, so was his other family. But this is what Mark Twain, if you're interested in.
Right here, you
just
have the
talking
quote.
about-
Beautiful, that's what I was referring to. You have the quote.
Do you want to read it out loud?
Nations of the world.
If the statistics are right, this is Mark Twain, the Jews constitute about 1% of the human race. It suggests properly, means rationally, the Jew ought to hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is a prominent on the planet as any other people, and its commercial importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. Right. This is another thing that's remarkable about the Jewish people, is that we're always in the head of society, right? First of all, we were the first to be involved in spirituality throughout all the medieval generations. We were a religious people involved in the books when all the nations around us were involved in hunting and murder and war. The contributions that the Jewish people give to the world are totally out of proportion to their percentage among population, right? So it's really remarkable.
Why don't they ever emphasize that? You don't hear.
There are many
anything.
things that are very remarkable about the Jews.
But they
These are
don't
some of them.
emphasize it to people, the general population. You know, hear it on
Because
the
it
news.
doesn't
That's
benefit
part of what
when
we're trying to
they're
figure out,
raising
right?
Jews that-
Right.
that they hate.
Right.
So they're takers, they're not givers.
The Egyptians, let me keep reading. The Egyptians, the Babylonian, the Persian rose filled the planet with sound and splendor. meaning in their time of rule, they were the greatest. Then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and Romans followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but have burnt out. And they sit in twilight now or have vanished. The Jews saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts. Right? So that means the Jewish people, not only we survived external forces, that we weren't extinguished by all the nations trying to persecute us generation after generation, but also internally, we survived in our original form. We're still the same authentic people we were. You know, if a Jew from 2,000 years ago were to show up today, he would be so comfortable. He would be saying the same prayers as we're saying today, keeping the same Shabbat. The Hebrew names would be the same. He wouldn't have a difficulty pronouncing the names. It's just crazy to think about that no other society is like this, that we kept our authentic
Same custom.
Even the language,
our form.
even the language itself, we would be able to actually understand Aramaic. Like they would be
Right.
able to understand us.
Right. We would speak the same language, right? Either Aramaic or Hebrew, whatever it is, right?
Yiddish.
Yeah. All things are mortal, but the Jew is not mortal. This was his conclusion. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? And Mark Twain didn't answer this question. So thank you for this. Very nice that you have a copy of it. Very good.
You want me to make you a copy?
Good coincidence.
You have a copy machine?
I'll take a picture of it later.
Outside. I was going to, but I.
Yeah. Good. It's a famous
I will
famous
bring it
quote, but
next
it's good to have it.
Reminds me of
Anybody
a
else? Very good.
famous lecture Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson gave about Mark Twain in a university in Texas many years ago. I'll find the link and I'll send it to you, Rabbi.
Okay, so he doesn't have the answer, but we do have the answer. The Torah gives us the answer. And the answer is that all of these phenomenons coming together, it just makes it even more remarkable, because you have all these phenomena coming together, and the answer is that it's God's hand. And if we look in the Torah, we'll see that it was all predicted. It was all promised. God promised us that we're going to have a hard time. He promised us that we're going to survive, that we're going to stay intact. He promised us that ultimately we're going to keep our connection, we're going to keep our tradition, and we're going to lead the world. We're going to be a light upon the nations. We're gonna lead the world to utopia, to the final era of the redemption. Okay, so this is our destiny. The fact that God gave us the Torah on Mount Sinai gave us a special mission. It put us in the place, but put it this way, God wanted that out of all people, he should have one legion. We're going to be the leaders. We're going to lead the world towards a spiritual era. We're going to lead the world towards a world of light. And he's going to give them the Torah. Which people did he choose? So we got lucky. We had a great-grandfather. His name was Abraham. And God loved him. And he said, okay, your kids are going to be the ones to carry on the torch. And so he gave us the Torah at Mount Sinai. And we accepted it. And it's a big responsibility. And that responsibility comes with a whole package. So that tells us we're going to survive.
Was Abraham Jewish? Only because I'm asking you
First
this,
Jew, yeah.
because they say that the three religions, Christianity, Muslim, and Judaism, all derive from Abraham. That's why I'm wondering.
Torah Cafe.
One more video. I think this is the last video for tonight.
But he talked about the Moshiach, he didn't mention that.
Yeah.
You didn't mention the Moshiach, that's the ideal.
That's the that's the final redemption. Do you see the video? Yeah, you should see it now.
About we're the chosen people. But I didn't know what it really meant. But it's not that we're chosen because we're better, we're chosen because to have it harder. But
we have a history.
but
Okay.
you know, when you say that to someone.
Do you see the video?
I think it's hubris. I think it may be, in a way they're envious of us. I don't know.
That's what we were saying.
Well, when everybody asked me,
TorahCafe.com.
offered us the Torah,
Yeah.
we said we will accept it and we will read it. You know?
Yeah,
But
and
look
then
what Moses had to do, he had to wrestle
and
with
then when
God
I had
to keep
friends
those Jews alive after
and
they
they,
did
and I asked them the basis
Yeah.
from them,
It wasn't gonna happen.
Well, it was a new
But-
covenant, in other
Right.
words.
Right,
discounting.
right. Okay, let's not get into that now, but yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
a
I know.
separate
You just
discussion.
wanna get sidetracked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, but I see everybody's everybody's on the right track, right? Let's see where it's stated.
Right.
You know who this is? You know, Michael?
What is that?
I heard
The
it.
secret of Jewish survival is that God keeps his promises. And God never promised us a rose garden, to use the old cliche, but God did promise that the Jewish people would survive, that we would be an eternal people, that we would never go away, we would never be completely wiped out. It's fascinating when you read prophecies in the 5 books of Moses, the book of Deuteronomy extensively, and then in the prophetic books. There is a great deal of warning about suffering. We've had more than our share of suffering. That's real. God has kept that promise, but he's also kept the promise to keep us alive. And I do believe that Jewish history is completely peerless. There is nothing else like it in all of human history. And I'm reminded of a poem written, I believe it was 1854, written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, called The Jewish Cemetery at Newport, where he meditates on looking at the opening stanza is how strange it seems these Hebrews in their grave close by the seat of this fair seaport town, silent beside the never silent waves, at rest in all this moving up and down. But what Longfellow writes about is the idea that dead nations never rise again, that these are interesting people and they all yearn for returning to their homeland, but dead nations never rise again. And the Jews are just, as Arnold Toynbee said 60 years ago, a fossil civilization. Well, guess what? We're more than that. And I think it is simply impossible to look at the course of Jewish history and not to see the hand of a higher power, to see some role for divine providence.
Okay, so this is very important. We have to see things in context.
Mhm.
When we see anti-Semitism and it worries us and we're trying to figure out what's going on, we have to see the full picture. The full picture is we have a destiny. We're not just flowing with the rest of civilization like any other nation is. We're not up for wherever the wind will carry us. We have a very special destiny. Together with the fact that we received the Torah and we're God's chosen people, and together with the fact that we have an eternal survival, part of that is that we're always going to be the people that are singled out by everybody else. You know the Vehi She'amda we say on Passover? Vehi She'amda, right? We raise the glass and we say, in every single generation, Shebachol Dor Vador, in every single generation, Omdim Aleinu Lechalotenu, they get up against us to destroy us. V'hakadosh Baruch Hu Matzileinu miyadam, and God saves us from their hands. So it's part of the destiny. It's part of the prediction. Every single generation they're going to get up against us to harm us. And this was actually part of the covenant God made with Abraham called Brit Bein HaBetarim, which was the covenant of the parts, which was the first time when God told him that his grandchildren are going to go into exile in Egypt. And over there, God tells him everything that's going to happen in the history of the Jewish people. We're going to be in Egypt, and we're going to be in Babylon, and we're going to be exiled by the Romans until today, when we're going to suffer from the Ishmaelites. And then ultimately, God promises him that in the end, they're going to come back, and I will give you this land.
Who's the Ishmael?
Right here. Those are the Arabs today.
Oh,
So it's all predicted. It's all given to us. So when we see, there was a story, Rabbi Akiva, he was a rabbi during the time of the destruction.
yeah.
He witnessed the destruction of the temple.
One of the best rabbis.
Right? And Rabbi Akiva was once passing by the Temple Mount together with his colleagues, and they saw a fox coming out, walking on the Temple Mount. Just walking around in this holy place. And the other rabbis started crying. They saw the temple here just a few years ago. This was the holiest place in the world. And now there's a fox running across. And actually, there's a prophecy from one of the prophets. He says, foxen are going to walk on the area of the temple. And so they saw the prophecy being fulfilled in front of their eyes. They started crying. And Rabbi Akiva smiled. And they asked him, why are you smiling? You don't realize how bad this is? And he said, I'm smiling because there's another prophecy that says Jerusalem will be rebuilt. As long as I didn't see the first prophecy being fulfilled, I didn't know if the second prophecy would be fulfilled. But now that I see the first part happening, I know it's a package deal.
Bigger picture.
Right. So we have to look at the full package. We have to know that if we see terrible things happening to the Jewish people throughout the world, this is not an excuse. This is not a reason why bad things are happening. Right? We're not getting into that. But what we're saying is we're putting it in context. We're giving it more background to the fact that the Jewish people suffer so disproportionately to anybody else in a way that's so unreasonable that it doesn't make sense to say any reason for it. It's part of a much greater destiny.
I know when you say about the Jews being killed during the Nazi era, I've had somebody not Jewish say, well, a lot of people were killed. 10 million Russians or whatever, but meanwhile, we're such a minority that I didn't even realize that in Eastern Europe, they wiped out 2/3 of our people. And
Proportionately.
It's also like, I don't have any Holocaust survivors in my immediate feeling. Maybe I have it happened somewhere in Russia, but Hank, his parents were, and it's very hard when it's really happened to people in your family to even conceive.
Right, it's very hard. It's very hard. And
It's like,
right. We're not saying it's not hard, but we do want to show, which is, by the way, another thing. I want to get to another point, which is many people have it difficult. Let's say, I'm sure many of you can relate to this. An average American identifies as an American, sees himself as a regular person among his neighbors. He feels very confident and comfortable in his surroundings. And then he wakes up one day and he turns on the TV and he sees, in this city in the US, there's a anti-Semitic attack, in another city's anti-Semitic attack. How do you feel? It makes you feel so
it threw me.
insecure.
Right, it threw me.
What happened?
Changed me.
Am I part of the minority that everybody hates? Like all my neighbors that were nice to me till today, what happened? Am I living in a different reality than I lived in until today?
Right.
It's right. It does to you a weakness, right? It makes you feel
makes you
takes away your confidence.
Empathetic too.
But it brought
As
up
a
my
Jew.
radar also, because I'm 5 feet, but I'm very feisty, and look, it's crazy.
Allison.
But I brought a can of Lysol with me, right? I don't want somebody that's why when you didn't, excuse me, but when you didn't say who it was, I get nervous about it.
Allison, TMI.
All right. I have Jewish.
So I just want to say this. These feelings, right? These feelings are justified if you would be a regular person. If you were just an average American, a guy straight out of the line, then
it's not going to affect
then you would be right. The thing is that you are different. You are unique.
Yes.
Don't look at it as a weakness. Realize that this is your strength. The fact that you are unique, realize this is because you're special. It's because you have a special destiny. It's because you're the chosen people. There's a famous line from Fiddler on the Roof. He says, I know we're the chosen people, but can't God choose somebody else once in a while because they keep suffering? It's a good question. The answer is realize this is what's unique about us.
But you can rationalize, and I know part of it it's very true in looking at it in the final analysis. However, these terrible killings, these terrible incidents of hate, all 100%, 110% are unjustified.
Correct.
Totally injustice.
This is not mitigating the atrocity,
I know you're
the
not.
pain.
But at the same time, when it's relatively speaking, Allison, when it's relatively speaking about yourself and your own situation, it really hits home. Those people, those hostages. How could you tell? I mean, it's unimaginable. Every time I hear describing, I feel like part of me is is getting it.
Right.
Like
Let me ask you about the people who are suffering even more closer to home.
Yeah.
Does this strengthen their sense of Jewish identity or weaken their sense of Jewish
Strengthen,
identity?
strengthen.
Which is very interesting. Look in history, this is always the way it was. Whenever Jews suffered pogroms, it always strengthened their sense of Jewish identity. Why? Shouldn't they want to run away from it?
Suffering should be proportional to great things that we get. The very fact that we're different from everybody else is what should make us stand out.
Right.
Furthermore, the land of Israel is not just a nation like any other nation. It's not a land like any other land. It's a
Holy land, exactly.
Exactly. And so when it got treated like any other nation by the United Nations, voting it in like some other piece of soil, the United Nations became a double-edged sword for us. And 70 years later, now we see. But I think the whole gist of what I'm gathering is that we're very different people from everybody else. It's not in our DNA, but it's in our spirituality where our souls have roots to Hashem.
Well, it is DNA too.
But it's also we have
He
two
said-
other major religions there. Why would they want to do that? That's what I don't understand.
Mayor, didn't you say in our reading, you
We
had
have to go back to
mentioned,
last week for that.
I think
right?
rightly so.
Remember last week.
You had mentioned the DNA, why do some people act the way they do? It's because their ancestry were the same. And it gets carried on, that same DNA, that same faith. Did you
Right.
say it manifests itself?
Right. So here we're explaining it much deeper, which is that it's all God's hand.
And how do you
All part of God's hand.
separate? You know, it's supposed to be, they use the word church, of course, because we're founded Christians, but church and state, they always said to government and religion separate, but it's never been
But the
that
government
way.
has to protect the people. If there's a Jewish community, they said they have to provide protection regardless of
Yes.
who that
also.
community
Well, no,
is.
but
right?
I meant, no, I don't mean it that way, protect, I'm saying, but with Israel, it is also very political.
Oh,
So
with
that's what I'm
Israel.
saying,
Yeah.
you know, people it's overlapping.
Right. In Israel, they don't separate church and state. Like
Because
they do
there
in
were
America.
people
It's much
protesting
different there.
before
It's
this.
a Jewish state. It's a
They
Jewish
have, they are democracy,
there's a-
unlike the other nations.
But
It's very nuanced though.
But they were protesting, the citizens were
But they are the only
protesting.
democratic nation in that region.
Right.
And they've
right.
done more as a pillar
Oh,
for
I
the
know
rest of
what I'm
the
saying,
nations there.
but the citizens.
But it's not
were
recognized
protesting
because they're
Netanyahu.
different,
There was
like
conflict
we
there
are.
Yeah,
recently.
yeah, yeah.
No.
When Israel tries to be like every other country, that's where I believe they fail.
Are they
No,
trying
but
to
isn't
try to
it true
assimilate
also?
to some degree?
Here, one more
Some like
question.
the civil
One more
rights,
question.
for sure.
David, one more question. What can we do to mitigate anti-Semitism? There's many answers for this.
I don't know. I really don't.
But I'll tell you what not to do. You know what not to do? Throughout the generations, there have been many attempts to try and find a solution for the Jewish problem by assimilating, which means like this. We're so different and they hate us because we're different. So if we become less different, they'll hate us less. Makes sense, right? Does it work?
No.
They tried it again and again, and it never works. It never works. When did they try it? During the time of Hanukkah, the Hellenists said, well, we're gonna merge with the Greeks. Did it work? It didn't work. During the time of the first temple, they tried making peace with Ashur. I think that's Assyria and Egypt. It didn't work. The Babylonians came, they took them over. Up until the intellectuals in Germany, they said, well, if we become secular and become intellectual, you learn in their universities and contribute to science, then we're going to be on the same page as them. And that's what they did. They were very successful in
And
the
they
German
looked down on
universities.
other
But then what
Jews, too.
happened?
But they also looked down on other Jews.
Right, but then what happened to those Germans? Did
Yeah,
they,
they
did
were
they
the
have
first to
immunity?
go.
There you go. The communists in Soviet Russia, they said the same, right? Well, the Jewish party of the communism, they were spearheading the Jewish community, saying this is going to be our solution, right? Every time the Jews tried lowering the defenses, sort of assimilating, it never worked. Why? Because the whole Jew hatred is not rational. It's not something that you can play with like a natural phenomena that you can find a solution for it. We can't change our identity. Our identity was formed at Mount Sinai, and we can't take that back afterwards. what could we do? We could embrace our identity. We could realize that we are different. We're not going to try to make ourselves less different, but realize we.
Celebrities.
Sorry, the internet reset itself. Don't ask me why.
The only thing is the movie industry. There weren't, and certain things that people.
Prominent celebrities.
What do you say, Mayan? What are your thoughts on this discussion?
The entirety of it or the last part?
To share one key thought.
One key thought. I think you hit the nail in the head that anti-Semitism is an evolving thing. And as Jews evolve, anti-Semitism evolves with it. And I think there is a really good argument there that it doesn't connect necessarily to something specific as well. I think both of those are just, it's two ways to looking at things: society change, history change, the culture change, but it stays, but the essence stays, right? In regards to the last discussion that we've had, how to does assimilating work or doesn't work? I would say that.
I'm listening. I'm just getting a charger.
Yeah, no worries. I would say that as an Israeli, I think one of the things that we are very, I think, different, or sees ourselves different than at least either the former generation or even people outside of Israel. We don't run, we fight. It's different. That's one. I think second, I would postulate that there is a part of assimilation that is critical and actually positive, not in losing your sense of self, but integrating with the community such that you have a voice and you have an influence. And I think that's a very fine balance to have. Not always successful, but I think allowing yourself to do both is critical for the successful of you being or allowing yourself to be yourself. That is at least my point of view, right? How do you still be a Jew and live in America, right?
Yes, you could still be a feminist.
Right. Yeah. All very, very good points.
And
like there's a synagogue, I'm not gonna say, where they allow women to come up as a part of the minyan. Well, they wouldn't have any day if they didn't allow it.
I mean, there are two sects in Judaism in which allow women to be a part of the minyan regardless. It's not a new thing.
Let's focus. Yeah. You were gonna say something else?
Yeah. I would say, and another part that I think was you had bullet points. How did it look in history? And then how to fight anti-Semitism. I think to me, the modern way of anti-Semitism is much harder to identify, as it is ingrained within a certain it's much more nuanced, and and that's it's tricky. How do you do that? How do you show people that that's what they're doing? Because you said you have to call out the person who is doing it, right? I think back in the days, being an anti-Semite, it was not something that you would be called out for more than, and today they hide. and they
Right.
hide under like ideals of humanity, and that becomes very, very difficult to fight against.
Right. It's a subtle idea to point out, but it has to be pointed out. It has to be highlighted. It has to be contrasted. It has to be really contrasted by you, so that you should be able to convey that
And in
message.
context.
Yeah.
Right? Like to point out other examples of similar things that are the double standardism, or
Analogies help.
the fact that they ignore all the good things that Israel does, all the humanitarian initiatives that Israel does, and they only
And
focus on
science.
But they
the.
also tried to isolate them. When they
I heard a
should be-
story. I heard a story today. There was a high school kid. He tells his father, "I'm dropping out of school." One night he tells him, "I'm dropping out of school. That's it. I'm not involved in it anymore."
Mhm.
So his father says, "Well, come on, you're almost done. You're in your last year. You could." He says, "No, he's done. It's too hard. He has to get up every morning, go to school. It's too hard, too much homework. He's done." He said, "Well, let's talk to the dean. Maybe we can work something out." Said, "No, I don't want to talk to the dean. I'm done. Have a nice day." So his father's brokenhearted. He doesn't know what to do. He tries to talk to a friend, to a mentor. Nobody can help him. His son said, "I'll drop out." Anyway, the next morning, he wakes up. In the morning, he sees his kids. He's ready for his kid to go, go out on the street and look for some drugs. And he sees his kid puts on his backpack and goes to school. He says, "Oh, okay, maybe after today, maybe he wants to, catch one last day of school." Day is over. His son comes back home, behaves like a good boy. He does his homework. The next morning, he puts on his backpack again, and the father is just surprised. What's going on? He told me he's dropping out. Then the third day, he goes to school. Every day he's doing his homework. He asks his son, he says, "Didn't you tell me you're dropping out?" His son said, "Yeah, you see, before then, you always used to notice the things that I didn't do good. And now, all of a sudden, you're noticing that I'm going to school and I'm doing my homework."
That's
reverse
that's-
psychology.
Right.
Is it a true story? But it sounds something.
Just
It's
an analogy. And the point is that everybody sees all the terrible things that Israel is doing, whether they're right or wrong. But it's so disproportionate to all the good that Israel's doing as an only country doing so much good.
It's a phenomenon.
It's a rabbi
It's a
attack.
phenomenon.
Rabbi Patrick joke.
David, what's your takeaway from today?
I don't know how to solve anti-Semitism. I just feel like we're a small minority compared to the influence we have on society, and so it makes us a convenient scapegoat for people's problems.
That's true.
And I see a lot of people, they just, they might say something, but I feel like they're looking for an excuse to blame for their problems more than they're trying to help Palestinian people. And,
That is so true.
reality is complex, and people are looking for emotionally potent oversimplifications that they can blame for why their life isn't going the direction that they wish it was. And so, throughout the ages, Jewish people are always there. Like, we're the same as them, we live with them, but we're different at the same time, and that makes people not trust us. And also, I see now there's a difference, I see a lot of Asian people, now that we're going through this, they don't seem as anti-Semitic. They're more see Jewish people as, wow, these people are family oriented, they're ambitious, highly motivated, they're very put an emphasis on getting a higher education. Whereas people with European background are like, these people are cunning, they're full of guile, they're greedy, they can't be trusted. And
where did you see evidence of this?
in my personal life, and also I was reading about like philo-Semitism and stuff, and a lot of it is influenced by people's experience in World War II,
I thought I meant now, okay.
Yeah, just in my personal life,
No, but even.
I have and even Muslim friends. I've never had a Muslim friend tell me, why, why don't you do, I've never heard somebody, they're never going to give you a hard time for being religious or for not eating like they do, or, you get that from some European people, like, not European, but people with that background, like, why are you different? That's making me nervous. You know, even people that I've known for years.
But you're different than them? I don't understand.
I actually lived with an Egyptian person before I got married. And I must tell you, he respected my religion. He said, you know, I respect you, you have a white heart, whatever that means. But we got along well intellectually. He was a young guy, he was only like 17 or 18. He was my tenant, actually, I owned the apartment. He was in Flushing, in an Orthodox community. He went to Queens College, very bright. And we respected each other. We had no problem assimilating. And I find, generally speaking, if you're kind to somebody, if you're friendly, for the most part, they're going to be friendly with you because there's always some subject you can latch onto and sort of communicate. If they're naturally full of hate, they're going to be hateful to other people a lot of times. So I found the connection I had with him. I lived with him for about a couple of years.
Hank, you always get along with everybody.
Yeah, we're the
But I make an effort.
Well, it's not just that we're Jewish.
But
you
I'm
have
still
the same
hated, believe me, I
mentality.
feel it.
Yeah.
But I have a friend from Saudi Arabia, and he even sends me messages, Happy Hanukkah, because he lives in the United States. His father worked for the UN, but I hate to say it, but I recently unfriended him on Facebook because I'm afraid if he says anything, because I read Saudi Arabia they were, even though they might have gone, were about to embark on an agreement with Israel, they are now not, and I got a little afraid, and for him too, not to say it, because it's so.
Who's this, Joe?
No, this is Kamal.
Oh, yeah.
And I have another friend that's Jordanian, but he doesn't contact me that much, but,
Keep yourself around good people.
well, you know,
Yeah,
I
keep yourself
try to
around
be.
She normally does. She's a
No,
good
because I
person.
feel as much as I'm very sociable, ha ha ha,
She is, yeah.
but I'm very no nonsense in other ways. So I have both sides of me, and my radar is up. And, you know, when my parents were, you know, a little short-sighted, and I remember when they were saying, if you marry somebody not Jewish, and I have in the past, one was, one wasn't, and
She paid for it.
and excuse me, and then yeah, it would be thrown up to you. But also, my Jewish husband
You're on TV.
was even, my Jewish husband was even anti-Jewish, so that's even crazy. But and
Yeah, that is crazy.
but you know,
It's good you're around good
She
people
married
now.
somebody like
Good
that.
you're
who's
around good
Jewish and
people now.
and then
Yeah.
Semitic at the same time.
and then the second one was German Christian. But anyway, I met, you know, Hank and I have a very similar, like it's not both Jewish, we're just similar in our beliefs, and we do get along with I'm not gonna say I'm this and you're this, because that's what they'll do to us the
We don't
same. I'm not
try
gonna
to
be
do
the
that.
way they are. If they're like that to me, I'm not gonna, unless you do something.
Okay, Ken, what's your takeaway from today?
Rabbi, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me anything.
Okay, I won't ask you.
Okay.
He's ready for a game.
Hi, what's your takeaway? Hi, what's
I
your
think
takeaway?
it's broken up again.
Okay.
I want to see what you look like next time.
I'll say this, I came to Jackson Heights when I was 2 years old in 1981. I went to yeshiva, had a hard time at yeshiva. By the time I got bar mitzvah, I left. And I grew up in Jackson Heights. There was no Jewish friends around. After I left the yeshiva, I was then making friends with all the